Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Challenging Chats with Dev and Steph. Today we're going to talk about a really good topic that applies to everybody at some point in life. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people at some point in life. We're going to talk about how to survive your first year of marriage. Now, for those of you that don't know, what makes us qualified to talk about this? Well, we have been married now for 14 and a half years. Mm-hmm. Which sounds pretty crazy to say it out loud. And we'll be married for 15 years in June 26th. So we've been through, I mean, if we're going to make it now. We're for sure.
Here we go. We beat the odds.
Yes. So, but, for starters, first year marriage can be challenging. For different people at different times in life, it can be more or less. We learned how to live independently together, basically, because before that, neither one of us had lived on our own outside of like living in a dorm or anything like that. So our only independent living experience is together, which gave us an advantage because we didn't have to overcome anything with that, but we did have to overcome expectations that we had for the right way to do things. And I guess we could talk a little bit about our struggles at first, which are fairly common. Our first big fight was over a t-shirt being left on the couch, which I didn't think was that big of a deal, but my wife differed.
Yeah.
An opinion.
Sure. Well, I think because my perception of it was different. And I think that's important to this discussion. So when we're talking about marriage, we're not just talking about, two people fell in love and now we want to live together. Like, okay, well, practically that means you're combining two separate upbringings and two separate perceptions on the day-to-day living and what that looks like and what that means. And some of that you can talk about before you get married, but some of it you just figure out as you live together, and you realize there's a lot of details that go into just day-to-day living that you take for granted. I think, wherever you've grown up, this is just the way we do X, Y, and Z, and we don't consciously think about it. And then when you start living with someone who's had a totally different upbringing, even if they're reasonably similar, then inevitably there's going to be some confrontation where those viewpoints and perceptions, opinions clash. And for me, coming into marriage, I didn't really think about things being differences of opinion, or it just didn't enter my mind.
It's right and
like
wrong.
There was certain things that like everybody does it this way, or this is the right way. Like I don't understand how you can't see it that way. Like it was baffling to me. And like I was very much a black and white thinker, right and wrong. This is about things that they're now knowing there's not a right and wrong way. We were talking about like laundry, for instance. There's not a right way or a wrong way to fold towels, or something like that. But in my mind, it's like, yes, my way is the right way, and your way is not the right way, so you need to do it my way. And if you don't, that's upsetting, even though I might not even communicate that to you. I might just like assume. And I think that was the problem, was just assuming that you understood this is a universal truth.
So
and
I think we actually can do 3 hacks, because I think the first hack for just giving you advice on how to survive is just that communication, because you have to learn, and it's not like it's specific communication of things that you view as important.
Well, I think communication doesn't have to be a separate hack. So I think the baseline of how to come into marriage and for it to be successful is what we were talking about before we started recording, is a mutual respect.
Yes.
But that's like sounds good. You're like, oh, of course I respect so and so. But what does that look like? And coming into a marriage, it looks like the humility to understand that my way or my opinion is just that. It's not the right way. This person that I'm combining my life with has equally valid opinions and
should have a valuable opinion to you.
It's equally valid to me. That's what I'm saying. So there's that mutual respect. So I come in, ideally I'm already coming into the relationship with humility, that we're both going to learn together of like, I've done it this way and maybe you do it this way, but I'm not right and you're not wrong, or vice versa. we're combining our lives. And now if there's some kind of contradiction, or then we decide together how to then move forward as a couple in whatever it is that we're discussing. And then that is where the respective communication, because I'm actually willing to communicate it, as opposed to what we've seen happen in a lot of relationships is I'm not going to say it, right? Because I don't think I should have to.
Because you should already know.
You should just know. If you know, and this is what we hear, if they loved me, they would just X, Y, and Z, even though we've never explicitly communicated that. And that's not respect. I don't know what that is, but it's not a respect for this other person that says, you know what I'm going to do.
Well, it's selfish just because you're expecting someone to read your mind and do that. It's only seeing things through your lens and refusing to understand how someone may not interpret things the same as you
exactly.
do. Which is one thing that's 100% true. I feel like this is part of that communication hack, is understanding that men and women do not, like, our brains don't function the same.
Sure.
And even like there's differences based upon how you were raised in different avenues. And so it's understanding, like, how can I communicate to you the thing that is most important? And also in that, how can I communicate to you in a way that tells you that, hey, I care about you? Because I think there can be bad communication of just like, you know, but so how can I communicate to you in a way that both reassures my affection for you, but also brings up things that you need to know about.
Sure.
If you're going to be my partner and helper.
Well, I think that's why we call it communication too, and not talking.
Yeah.
Because those are two different things. I can talk at you all day long, but if I'm never listening, then that's not respect. Again, it's a different motivation.
Yeah.
But if my motivation is I respect you, you respect me, we want this to work, so let's come together and let's communicate, well, then that's me sharing with you and me listening to you share with me, and us discussing and then coming to conclusions and figuring out answers for ourselves. But that's communication, and that's often what's lacking, right?
Well, and then yeah, I mean, I totally see how, before we were talking about it, and because for me, I've always said respect is important for men. I went to, heard marriage seminars, everything, talk about that very point. But I think a valuable point is that if, we were talking about the shirt on the couch, which to me, no biggie. Who cares, right?
Right.
Couldn't be less important. To my wife, it was important. Having a neat house is important. Having a cluttered house makes her anxious. And so, it took me a little while to get that. Didn't take me too long, but it did take me a little while to get that. But what I figured out is, because I'm like, well, that's stupid. Like, the gut reaction is to what is not important to you is to be like, oh, that's stupid. And it's easy for both people to do that about things that the other one finds as important. But if I respect you,
right,
then I care about your opinion. So even if I think something isn't important to me,
right,
I'm willing to take the time to do whatever that important thing is because it's important to you.
Right.
It doesn't really matter what I think.
It becomes important to you because it is important to me, and that's
and vice
love.
versa.
That's respect. Yes. Respect is love.
That's how you show love. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and just again to exemplify how to do things better. So that instance, right? We're talking about like a shirt on the couch. It wasn't just
and
that.
then guys, if you, sorry, go ahead. I had a thought pop in my head. Go ahead. I'll keep it.
Okay. Hold your thought. But what I was going to say is, had I communicated earlier, right, that this was bothering me, and why it was bothering me, because it made me feel unappreciated. It made me feel like you were taking me for granted. It made me feel like I was being treated like a maid or something because I'm picking up after you like all the time. And I was like, why I shouldn't have to tell you to do this. Like, you should just know. But I never communicated. Like, I never sat down and was like, hey, this is really bothering me. Can you please, like, whatever, like, I didn't sit down and really communicate that well. And because of that, then we have this big fight over something that's seemingly small. And honestly, it's not a like life changing thing, right? Like leaving your clothes on the floor or something. But because of how it was making me feel, it was a big issue for our marriage because it wasn't just clothing anymore. It was how I was perceiving our relationship, right? And then your response to that, you know, initially was like, you shouldn't be upset about this. That's stupid.
Exactly.
That's inflammatory, right? Like that was not a great response. So
No.
I didn't start well because I didn't communicate sooner. And then I got frustrated and all this is built up. And then I'm lashing out. And then you're responding in kind. And so it just becomes this whole thing that it didn't need to be, is the point, right? It doesn't need to be that way if we're willing to respect one another, communicate clearly. Don't just make assumptions, right? Just communicate like, hey, this is bothering me. Can we figure this out? And actually seek solutions, and you be willing to listen, and vice versa, right? Then things can progress, right? Then you can grow together. You can learn together. You can make forward progress. But if you're not doing those things, then it just disintegrates. And we see the stats, right? Like we see that most marriages dissolve within the first year because of things like this, because of simple things like that never get worked out.
Exactly. And then and the funny thing is then people move on to another relationship where the same thing is repeated,
right?
Because the problem really isn't, it's not the other person, it's this habitual nature of, I'm going to prefer myself and what I think, and I'm not going to take time to respect the person, to listen to them, or to communicate them what needs to be done in a way that is productive.
Sure.
So
I like that, in a way that's productive.
Oh yeah, because there's because if you're just like, you're a slob,
attacking
you should do this.
Exactly.
If
that's
you,
a great point.
If you are so if Stephanie in her position could have, and maybe did a little bit at first, but you could just nag. You could just be like, oh, I just don't know. And you could come off that way instead of saying, hey, it makes me feel like you don't love me when you don't put any of the things that I consider important. And so as soon as like that clicked for me, which I think, too, guys, this is why having a relationship with God is the most important secret, is the biggest hack.
Absolutely.
Because both me and Stephanie have had times where we probably haven't communicated great.
Sure.
In fact, I know we haven't.
Absolutely.
And but then we go off and we spend time with the Lord, and then God deals with us, and we come back to each other and we say, hey, I screwed up. I shouldn't have said this. I was this and this to you, and I don't want that. And so, and it was the Holy Spirit being like, hey, you need to not do this. And so I think what was a huge helper for us is learning that, and we've done better and better.
Yeah.
We've had less and less fights where, hey, because then we started having issues when Stephanie would confront me, because I wouldn't say things either about stuff that she'd do. And rather than be confronting, I would be like, oh, I'm going to give her grace. But really, I wouldn't give her grace, because I'd be storing things in my back pocket. So that way, when the time came, if there was, hey, you're not doing this, I would be oh yeah, well, let me tell you about this guy, and just be ammoing out. And she would rightfully say that's not fair, which it wasn't. It's not love. And so, but that's why God is so important, because he's the one that reveals those truths to us and makes it real. And I feel like the biggest help for us is when we started to learn, because we genuinely do love each other, and we genuinely are in it for the long haul. And so we start to figure out what is a need, what is the big needs that we both have.
Right.
And then we started to say, okay, I didn't mean to hit that. We started to say, okay, here's how that's gonna be accomplished.
Yeah.
So I realized early on, not early on, but I started to realize early on that having things not be a mess in the house was important to Stephanie, and little actions that I could do would help. So, I remember the first thing I did was, it started with, don't leave your clothes on couch because we had a thing with that. But then it progressed to doing things, dishes, and things like that. And then when we had when we had our daughter is when I started to learn that Stephanie's really not built like me. I can be around people 24/7 and it doesn't drain me. So I don't have that, but she does. She feels like that social anxiety. And so she needs times of recharge where she needs to be away from everybody, myself included. At first, I thought, well, that's just ridiculous. Why would you want to be away from the love of your life?
Wounded. He was wounded.
My word, I was wounded. But as I grew and got more mature, I discovered that giving her time and making sure that she has that time is so important. It changed her demeanor. And so and this is one of those things where God would lead me, because she would be like, no, I'm good. Because she didn't want to feel guilty about leaving. So she'd be like, no, I'm good. I'm not going to go away. And I'd be like, no, you need to go. And I just push her to go, get some coffee and just go shop. And I'd give her money and be like, here, guilt-free, like, go. Just leave. And she'd go spend time. And then, it made a big difference doing that.
Yeah, so figuring out, again, talking about, like, the humility and mutual respect, like what we've been discussing is, and I think this is good, if you have the self-awareness to do this, then do it, is to figure out what really is important to you, like what makes you tick.
Well, and
share that
but
with
it's
the
not
other
only
person.
having the self-awareness too, babe. It's that if you are walking with Christ,
right, I
guarantee you, if you take time to pray and seek him, he'll show you these things. Because this wasn't like I just figured it out thing. This was a God revealed it to me thing and was like, hey, this will help you. And it did. It has immensely. And, I think the same is we've changed that way to where, we both have picked up on those things. And so, we do that. And then as you move on, and this is even true for that first year, but the whole deal with marriage, one thing that people overlook is the team aspect. And this comes in big when you have kids, because if you don't have a team, you will die. When you have children, that marriage won't last. You won't be able to make it through kids. But once you have kids, I say it's kids, even when you're married, you start to form this like, hey, we are a team. We're in this together. And so just like I think of video games, actually I think a lot of hockey, because hockey, there's always lines that change up because it's impossible to skate on the ice for 20 minutes at full speed and not be worn out. And so they're always changing guys every few minutes, changing lineups, because you want to have fresh legs. And I think for us, we've been really good at, especially later in our marriage, seeing when one person's getting like beaten down and then being like, okay, I'll pick up the slack.
Yeah.
And that's huge. I don't know how to
just that, because
describe that, but
even when you first get married, I think that understanding is important.
Yeah.
That it's not me against you. Like, even when I'm frustrated or you're frustrated, it's not meant to like go at each other then, right? As if we're each other's enemy. I'm like, no, we're on the same team. So me getting mad at you and punishing you still hurts me, because we're on the same team, and vice versa. So instead, it's again, okay, we're in this together. We do love each other. We respect one another. We're just having a miscommunication, a misunderstanding, whatever. We don't think the same on this. So how together can we figure this out and move forward, and coming with that kind of understanding instead. And then you had brought up a point too of how like the Lord would deal with us and we come later and apologize. And I think that's another big thing throughout your marriage. But in your first year, you're going to make mistakes. Yep. You're going to mess up. You're going to say the wrong thing. Like, things are going to happen, and you need to be able to own up to it and go and say, hey, I'm sorry. I did this, this, and this, and I shouldn't have, and not make excuses for ourselves. Just be like, I shouldn't have done that. It doesn't matter like what else was going on. I was out of line. Will you please forgive me and move forward, because
I
you
think
can't cover it up, like don't just ignore it, because that's one of those things that will fester.
Yeah.
And cause problems as well later on. So
I think as equally important to that is the understanding that, neither one of you are perfect, and you have to give grace.
Give grace. That's
to that person. Mm-hmm. Because if you can't give grace to that other person, how in the world are you going to expect anything? Mm-hmm. So, I think that's so important. Mm-hmm. And, that's, if you follow God, if you love him, he will 100% do that. Mm-hmm. And we've seen it time and time and time again. We've seen God work in people in our families' lives to where people, we were sure we were done giving grace, but their spouse wasn't, and saved them from, terrible circumstances, because they were willing to go to bat, for them, and willing to believe God for that. So, I think that's key. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
I don't think so. Yeah, marriage is about, I think that was a great analogy. Like, you are a team. And that, if you just stick with that, like, we are in this together, we do want this to work, then you're going to naturally then try to figure things out together. You're going to want to listen to the other person. You're going to want to grow together. It's just some of these pitfalls that just assumptions we make that can get in the way of that.
Selfishness, right? Ultimately.
Yeah, it's selfishness. And I think sometimes it's just you're unaware that it's there. You know what
you're
I'm saying?
unaware of how selfish you are.
You're unaware. And
I think getting married is like that first step in adulthood, at least for us it was, of understanding, all right, so there's still I love God, there's still selfishness in me, and then when we had kids, we're like, even greater awakening, because you're dealing with these little people that only think about themselves, and all you can do is give grace. They have nothing to offer you. That's not true. They're cute, but actually it is kind of true. So, all right, guys. Well, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, go ahead and give us a like. Tell us what you didn't like. If you think some of our advice is boo shenanigans, then go ahead and say in the comments. We look forward to engaging with you guys, and ultimately, we're not scared of anything.
We're not scared of anything.
Sadly, we grew up in the generation where we just turn off the computer, so comments don't bother us or cause us stress. I look forward to angry comments. So give us some.
Anyways, don't do that.
I'm joking. Well, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this. Take what you've learned, use it. You can succeed in your first year of marriage. Survive, thrive, do way better than even what we have. So, even though I feel like we did pretty good.
We did.
We do. With that said, guys, I'm Devin.
I'm Stephanie.
We'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Adios.